Hey y'all, thanks for being here today. I'm Krista Sampson and I'm here with Victor Sampson, and we're here to take a deeper dive into the kindergarten book. And so I will hand it over to him.
Fantastic. Thank you. As Chris said, she'll be moderating today, and I will be doing the presenting. So for today's deeper dive, we wanted to really focus on the kindergarten books and give you an example of what a investigation for kindergarten looks like. So we've got two versions of the kindergarten books. We have the Texas version here. There's the table of contents with the investigations on the slide. And we also have an NGSS edition. What makes these different is which set of standards they're aligned to. So they have different investigations in there. So we thought for today, we'll walk you through the investigation that's found in the NGSS book called Driving a Magnetic Cart. So I'll get kicked off here and get going with that right now. So when you start off an investigation, we start off everything with the task stage, and we introduce a phenomenon right off the bat. So probably the easiest way once you get a book is just go to our Learning Hub, enter your book code, and then you can use the presentation mode. What I did here for this webinar is just took pictures of what that presentation mode looks like so you can kind of see how that works. So you can show this on the screen, and it basically just sets up the introducing this video about a toy car that can be moved with a magnet. So let me show you what that video ends up looking like here. So after we show that video, then we can ask kids to tell us a little bit about what they whether they noticed on that. And since they're in kindergarten, they're not really needing to write down anything. You just ask them questions about what they noticed when they were watching that video. They're going to share tons of ideas. So what you can do is we have these anchor charts where you can keep a record of kind of the class thinking and class ideas. So at this point, you can write down anything they noticed. Most of the time, it'll be things like two magnets. It moves a little bit to the left, it moved to the right. The car had four wheels. Any of those kinds of things are great. By the end of this, what you want to do is introduce the question of why does the magnet car move, right? So trying to get to this idea of why does it move around when there's a magnet there. So that's the task stage. And then from there, what we do is introduce some science ideas. So we move the idea stage of the investigation. This is what you can show on the screen. Just watch some different, let's learn about some new science ideas that might help us answer that question. So for what we do for introducing science ideas in kindergarten is, since students are not quite ready to read on their own yet, we use videos that introduce these ideas and also give them a chance to see the words being used as they're displayed. Let me show you an example of what this looks like. I may not play this all the way through, but it'll give you a chance to see what the video looks like.
A magnet is an object with a special physical property. Magnets can be used to push or pull. Magnets can pull on certain materials, like iron and steel. Magnets can pull on other magnets if the ends are different. Magnets can push on things like another magnet. Magnets push on each other if the ends are the same. A pull moves objects closer to you. A push moves objects away from you. A push or a pull is a force that can move objects. Cause and effect in science is when one thing makes another thing happen. If you kick a ball, it will move. If you move the light switch, the light will turn on or off. Can you look for something that makes something else happen as we work together to answer the question?
So after they watch the video, you can play it once or twice for them. What you want to do is then ask kids, what are some things that you saw in the video that might help you answer our guiding question of the investigation? And then you can, as the teacher, record that on our anchor chart to keep a record of student thinking. Things like magnets have two ends, or they can attract or repel each other, or they attract some metals. These are just kind of ideas we're introducing to help kids start to make sense of why the toy car was moving around. From there, you can introduce some materials you can use because we're going to move into the plan stage. So we recommend usually that you have a kind of a setup of the materials you would have that you would need for this investigation. In this case, it would be a little car with a magnet attached to it and a magnet wand on that. And then you can show them how that works. And then from there, you can say, okay, let's together come up with a plan to try to figure out an answer to our guiding question. So in that case, then you can once again use an anchor chart to come up with, okay, this is what we have available. And we're going to have our little cart with a magnet on it. And then we're going to point the magic wand, the wand with both ends of the ceramic magnet and observe what happens. So we're going to try to figure out by moving this car around and see what happens. Then from there, once the kids all have kind of an idea of what they're going to be doing, you can say, go ahead and carry out your plan. Now, in this case, this is the first time at the kindergarten level that students have an opportunity to kind of record what they're seeing and what they're doing. So we have this little handout that comes with the investigation that you can give students so they, when they're playing with their magnets and testing out moving the cart around, they can draw pictures or write down words or anything that'll help them kind of keep track of the things they saw. At this case, it's usually pictures. Here's a little bit bigger picture of what that ends up looking like. So this little handout, lots of space for them to draw things and get excited about what they're seeing and doing. From there, what we're going to do is we want groups of kids to kind of see, well, okay, if after you figure these things out, what kinds of, what do you think should our answer to the guiding question be? So you can have them work in kind of small groups at this point where they can answer that question of what they think that's going through there. They can do that together in small groups by drawing or making pictures. And then from there, how do you know that? So what happened when you were working with the magnet in the car that makes you say that? So each group then can come up with kind of their ideas of why they think that happened. After that, the teacher can then solicit all of the ideas that the students had. So each group will come up with slightly different claims and slightly different evidence. So we're going to come up with a class claim that we all agree on at that point. So repose the question again, because it's always good to keep kids kind of, what are we trying to answer? And we go with why does the magnetic car move? And then what should our class claim be? So all the students can choose between the different ones that came up, and then talk through your evidence as well. And what you would do to keep a record of that is the class record is you'd use an anchor chart like that of just your question, the claim you're making, and your evidence, however they want you to display that with pictures, movements, words, however the class decides is best on that. From there, which is one of my favorite parts of the kindergarten investigations, is we get a chance then to listen to a story about a phenomenon. And in this case, we recommend reading Magnets Push and Magnets Pull by David Adler. And while they're reading, what you would do as a teacher is read this aloud, showing the pictures and the images in the book as you're going through. And then once you're done reading, have the kids come up with things that we already knew before reading the book and things that we haven't learned about yet and things that are new from the book. So you can ask kids, what's something you already knew that they talked about in the book? Oh, that's a great one. How about another one? Was there anything that you didn't know already that the book said? So it's getting this idea to kind of link these big ideas that science that they've been working with to other things as well, especially in the literature that they're seeing and reading. Then from there, we enter the last stage of the investigation, which is the report stage. And what we want to do is create a need for kids to have an opportunity to kind of communicate what they've learned and work on their writing and communication skills in the context of science. So to start off with this, what we recommend you do as a teacher is start coming up with kind of as a class list of the words, the new vocabulary that you have learned during this investigation. Things like polls or repel or attract, and really encouraging kids to share their definition of those and then correct them in any way that you need. But this becomes kind of their own little dictionary before they start writing. And then they can record those on a piece of paper on their own so they can practice their handwriting as well. From there, then you can say, okay, now what we're going to try to do is we're going to write a report to share what you learned during this investigation to your family at home or your caregivers. And so what you'll do is they're going to write a very basic kind of report that just includes their claim and their evidence for this. And to help them do that, we've created this kind of format where they're basically filling in 3 sentences. So in science, I figured out whatever that is. And we can also support students by going back to that class claim we made on before, where they can copy that down, or they're working on their handwriting for writing and putting together sentences for the first time. And then I know this is correct, that becomes their evidence. So they can say that, they can either write it on their own or copy it down depending on where your students are. And then the last part is a picture that shows what they did. So they'll probably, in this case, draw a little cart with a magnet on it and another magnet next to it, kind of doing that. From there, a big part of what we try to do in ADI, even if the younger grades, is to give kids opportunities to make mistakes and learn from that. So we include kind of a report review. So what you can do as a teacher is collect their drafts. Then you can go through and you can use this rubric, and then you can show them how to fix things, right? So on their report, you can go bring them over to a center, for example, spend some one-on-one time with them and say, okay, these are the kinds of things that you can fix, and then show them. And then from there, they can then do a final version of that. And you can give them another sheet of paper, and then they can make those corrections. And then what's really cool about this is what goes home to families or caregivers to let them know what you've been doing in class and what your kid and what their child has learned about. So it's a really nice little assessment of everything they figured out, and integrates the literacy skills, and it kind of answers that question of what did you do today, kind of thing. So you can see that, and then that ends with it. You finish this stage of this, and then that goes home. Now, if that was a lot, remember always that what we try to do in these books is have tons and tons of resources to help you kind of guide through these investigations. So here's the lesson plan for the driving a magnetic car for teachers. So we always start off with the overview, the guiding question, what students are figuring out, and a layout of what you can do is how you can break this over multiple days, right? It's to about 20 to 30 minutes per of these activities, right? So that kind of gives you a pacing of how you go through this. Then you have all your standards alignment, so you know what kind of standards you're addressing at that point. We also include the academic vocabulary, right? So when we're doing the learned words or the ideas, these are definitions that you can use and things to look for. So if kids don't bring these vocabulary words up, you can bring them as well. Also, if you want to know a little bit, brush up on the content of how magnets and things like that work. We have a little section about the science behind it, and we also talk a little bit about some common misconceptions students are likely to have when they're making sense of how that magnetic cart moves. We also leave little spaces for you to write down notes in your book. So every year as you do this, you're like, ooh, I got to remember to do that. You've got to stop to do that as well. Remember, we also come with all the materials needed, right? So there's a list of those. We have kits for all of these pieces, so you can get all set up and ready to go. And we also even include other picture books that you can use either at a reading station. If kids are interested in this topic of magnetism, they can come pull a book over at a station, or these are other ones that you can give students if they're just interested in reading more about that. And we add the Lexile level for that, so you can kind of judge which one would work best for your students. And then finally, always remember, Each one of these stages, we have everything broken down by activities in a way that makes it pretty easy to follow through. So as you look in the first activity here, it'll tell you what you do first and what do you show. Same thing with activity 2 in the first stage, and then all the way to 3, it'll remind you what things that you can put on your anchor chart and how that goes. So it's a quick read for that right before you do your lesson, and it's got everything you need to get started. Now, the big thing to remember is for the little guys, when we're talking about K through 2, they're still developing their literacy skills. So what we really did when we wrote these books, we were really starting to think about who's going to be able to make the record of their thinking. So if you think about as you're moving through the 7 stages of ADI, students are going to be actively making sense of stuff. And then as they're thinking about things, who's responsible for keeping a record of that so they can refer to it later. So if you can see in the table here on the slide, pretty much the teacher is doing most of that recording using those anchor charts that we showed you, except in the do stage and the report stage, that's where we want to give kids a chance to start communicating their ideas through writing. Then when you move to first grade, you can see that the plan and task stage, we have those ideas or those opportunities for students to work on their communication skills. And then by second grade, we're hoping that they're able to do all of that. Now, all of it's scaffolded all the way through, but the idea is we're kind of having this gradual release as they move up the grades and they get more and more used to using their developing literacy skills to their just kind of hitting the ground running at third grade. So with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Awesome. I have 2 questions so far. First from Haley. And how do you help students share what they're thinking, especially if they're still learning how to express themselves verbally?
Yeah, I think that's the big one. Is the nice thing about what we're doing is you're creating a context where they can practice, right? So it doesn't really need to be perfect at all those times, but encourage them to use gestures, demonstrate, show. The pictures are there. So that's really cool about having the hands-on materials with the magnets. You can say, okay, show me what you're thinking on that one, or draw me a picture. Or if you've drawn a picture, tell me what your picture is showing me. So having those multiple modalities is really helpful. And the more kids get chances to do this, the better they get at it. Is the way I always think about it.
Okay, awesome. And Vincent asked, how do you help students learn to talk to each other about their ideas?
Oh, I think that's always probably the biggest thing you can do in the younger grades is spending time talking about talk. So spending time and circling kids up and saying, okay, it's really important in science that we share all of our ideas and we want to listen to everybody. And then we want to be respectful. And what does respectful look like? And using this as a context to also teach those really important social skills over time. And once again, it comes from the more you do this, the better, right? So as you have these opportunities, you're creating an environment where it makes sense to talk about each other's ideas. And so you can use that as an opportunity to practice over time.
Thank you. I think that is all the questions we have. We are going to move to the next webinar room for the first grade.
Which starts at 4:30 if you want to join us. And then at 5, we've got a second grade if you'd like to join us for that one as well.
All right. Thanks so much. Hope to see you all in a few minutes.